Being human. Do you ever wonder what makes us who we are? Our habits, preferences, or where we came from? We are expressing ourselves in thousands of ways every day through our choices. Let's have a conversation with people who are having interesting lives. My name is Alun Walker. I'm a doctor of chiropractic and a human being.
Thank you for joining us on the 7th of the podcast Being Human. Today we've got a good friend of mine, Blandine Davies. She's actually here today to talk to us about a number of different things. I've got to know her quite a bit over this last month or so, and I thought to myself this would be a great lady to bring on and have a little chat to find out where she's been, what she's been up to, and actually how her life has panned out since the day she was born. So, Blandine, thank you for coming on the show.
You're very welcome.
There's some things I know about you, and there's an awful lot that I don't. And I've got a funny feeling with you weren't born in this country, were you?
No, I wasn't born in this country. So I was born in Uganda. Didn't grow up in Uganda. I grew up in Kenya and Tanzania, and then moved over to the UK when I was quite young, when I was 11.
11 years old?
11 years old.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I'm the eldest of three, shortest of three.
Shortest of three?
Best looking of the three.
Yeah.
Only kidding. Yeah, eldest of three. I've got a brother who lives in Portugal, and my sister is still in Hertfordshire, same town where we moved to when we came to the UK.
Okay, with the parents?
With the parents, yes.
Okay, so what was the move from early on? How old were you when you first moved?
So 11, and yeah, interesting story really. So when I say parents, I mean my stepmom, who's Dutch, and my dad, technically my stepfather. He's quarter Welsh, quarter English. So interestingly, I'm adopted. My brother and I are adopted. And
a full adoption.
Full adoption.
Okay.
Full adoption. We'll come on to more of that in a minute. But full adoption, and brought up by white parents, which is really interesting. So
sorry about that.
Sorry about that. No need to apologise. It's made me who I am.
Right.
So yeah, we moved here when we were 11. My biological mother moved here about a year and a half before us. And fortunately for me, it was an open adoption. So we got to see, obviously we knew we were adopted. How can you not know? All you need to do is look at the skin colour, right? But fortunately, it was an open adoption. So we got to see our biological mother as well and develop a relationship with her. So, yeah.
So what was the moves again? Just explain about what... Obviously, Uganda.
Yes.
What was the reason for the initial move?
So the reason for the initial move was my mum was pretty much running away from her abusive father.
Right.
So she was very young. She was 17 when she had me. And she one day just jumped on a bus and crossed the border over into Kenya, which is where she met I call him my father because he is my father, my adopted father, his dad, which is where she met him. And he moved over to Africa because there was, economically in the UK, it wasn't a good time. So he was sent over by his company to take a post up in Kenya. He worked in the brewery industry as well as the tea and sisal industry. So they must have met up, presumably in a nightclub or somewhere. And the rest is history.
Wow. And then the reason for moving from Kenya to the UK?
Well, it was Kenya to Tanzania.
Yeah.
So we moved there again for work. So he moved from the doing brewery and then went to work in the sisal industry. We moved there. I went to an international boarding school there. And then it really was just following my father's work, essentially. And then the move to the UK was again because of work.
Wealthy family, that's what I'm thinking so far.
Not really. I think wealth in terms of culture. We've got 7 different nationalities within just our immediate family. So you've got my mum who's Dutch. You've got me. I'm half Kenyan, half Congolese, which was known as Zaire at the time, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. You've got my sister who was born in Tanzania. So she's half Ugandan, half quarter English, quarter Welsh. So there's lots of different sort of nationalities playing into our immediate family unit. So rich in culture, not necessarily financially, but we got by.
And which was your favourite country as a child to grow up in?
I think it was definitely Tanzania. I cannot remember anything, funnily enough, anything about Kenya at all, apart from going back there and spending holidays on the beach. I can't remember my school. I've got a complete blank on Kenya. So that's something.
What age were you?
I was around 7.
Okay. Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So who knows? Who knows?
So the beach holidays in Kenya, and then what did you like about the second move? Sorry, I'm having a job keeping the Tanzania. Yeah,
Tanzania. I think that's where I was. I made really good friends. I was more independent. We moved to a place called near Arusha, a place called Moshi. So I went to what was then Moshi International School, and then we moved over closer to the coast to a place called Tanga. And the schools there were absolutely horrendous. And when I say horrendous, I can remember the school building was just a concrete block with no windows, no plastering. And I can remember the toilets.
Full air conditioning. Yeah.
Full air conditioning, circulating all the time, never needed a generator. And the toilets were, sewage logged essentially. So my parents decided it just wasn't good enough. So they sent me back to my previous school as a boarding student.
Okay.
With quite a few other students. So
how did you enjoy the boarding school?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant.
That was totally different,
That was totally different.
That was a school with windows.
That was a school with windows. And yeah, it was, it's still there today, and it's thriving. But I think that's where I sort of gained my independence, because it was sort of sink or swim, right? No mum, dad there to guide you, so you just got to get on with it.
Was there any different nationalities there?
It was very, very multicultural. So pretty much all of the expats sent their kids there. So it was very, very mixed. Very mixed.
Your whole life has been totally mixed.
Totally mixed. I feel much more comfortable when I'm in an environment where there's lots of different cultures.
So do I. It's much nicer.
It's much nicer. Yeah. So that's.
And then
what
when
I'm
you
used
moved to the UK,
mm-hmm.
you were how old?
I was 11.
Okay. And what was your whole idea when you came to the UK? How did you feel about it? What was your overall presence of this Great Britain?
Yes.
You must have been quite excited until you probably arrived.
We came every 2 years to visit my grandparents. So they lived in Lincoln at the time. So we loved that.
Lincoln's beautiful.
But we were always very happy to go back to Tanzania. But when we moved for good, I had a really hard time. I felt really angry with my parents because they made the decision to move without consulting me, and I'd moved so many times, for somebody that young, and I just felt that I was settled in the school, so I was quite angry. And then my first impressions was it was very cold. Culturally, it was very different to live here compared to coming here for holidays. The first things I noticed were things like people didn't really talk to each other or say hello, and it was my first experience of the nod, as being, I'm acknowledging you. I also found it really bizarre that people didn't wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning. We used to go and knock for our friends by 7:30 because we were ready to go. They were all still in bed. So it's stuff like that struck me as being really, really odd. Like, these people are really lazy. And then my brother and I were also the first black kids in the town as well as in the school. So we had all of that to contend with. But fortunately for us, we'd obviously always been in a multicultural environment. So
you knew how to deal and manage people. Being
around white people wasn't an issue, but I think the issue was being the only black people amongst white people. So that took some getting used to. But fortunately, both my brother and I were very, very good at sport, and that made us really popular.
What sort of sports were you good at?
Athletics. I played hockey. I did trampolining, karate, swimming, all of it, pretty much. And in fact, my brother's actually now a dancer, so he ended up training in dance and becoming a West End performer. So he's done a lot of the West End shows, and now in Portugal he runs his own dance school.
Does he?
Yes.
So you've been to Portugal as well? That's another place that you've been to visit him?
Been to Portugal.
I haven't yet.
Yeah,
I still
you
haven't
should
been
go.
to Portugal.
been to Portugal. My dad and mum are now in Spain, so I've been there as well. So we're all scattered.
I'd like to know, it's one of my interests, obviously being a chiropractor, but what's the healthcare as you've moved around the world? How have you sort of see it differ?
So, I mean, obviously I was really young whilst we were in Tanzania. I remember, I mean, we had to pay for everything. So everything was private. So we never got to experience the sort of national healthcare, so to speak. And I remember one time I was a bit naughty. After school, I'd gone to a friend's house and we'd cut through somebody's back garden. There was a hole in the fence. So we decided we always took this shortcut, but this time their dog was out. And their dog started chasing me. Didn't get to bite me, but sort of got a claw in my backside. Still got the scar. But because of rabies out there, my parents actually had to fly medicine over from Kenya because they'd run out in Tanzania. They had to get the injections chartered over by a small private plane to make sure that I got my injections I think it was a course of 6 weeks or once a week or something like that.
Is it right into the stomach? Is that?
I cannot remember, but all I remember was that my brother always used to ask to come and watch because he loved to see me cry.
Yeah,
when I got my injection.
I might be wrong about it, but I think it's a stomach injection for rabies.
Yeah, I honestly can't remember, but
yeah, nice.
But yes, I mean, we always had, again, because of, very fortunate to have my father. He was always in a good job, and we never had to worry about that there. I think here, I guess the biggest change that I noticed was I was never ill in Africa. I never had a headache. I never had a stomach ache, nothing. But when I came to this country, the food, the lifestyle, over time, I started noticing, hold on a minute, I've got a headache. What's that? Right? Never took tablets in my life. So I think that's the biggest thing that I noticed between the two countries.
Yeah, so with your parents, they were obviously happy with your education. What did you do when you left school? Did you go to college? Did you go to university?
Yes. When I left school, I decided to study law. In fact, I knew I was going to study law since a very young age. Ever since I could remember, I didn't want to do anything else. And for a long time, I never knew why. There was no reason until I asked my dad recently, why did I want to study law? And he told me, which is quite a funny story. He said to me that one day I said to him, Daddy, what's a lawyer? And he said, well, a lawyer is somebody who earns lots of money. They can make millions. And he said to me, well, do you want to marry a lawyer? And I said, well, no, I want to be one. I want to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
But anyway, long story short, I went to study law at the University of Kent in Canterbury. And then I did German as well. So I speak German, and I went to my gap year was in a town called Marburg, which is actually twinned with Northampton.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of come full circle, a little town called Marburg, and I studied German law there for a year, and then, went back for about 6 months to work.
You studied German law?
So I've got a degree in English law and a German law diploma. So
what was the direction for German?
I think it was just languages. I love languages. My son Ethan, his father is from French Guyana, so he speaks French. I learned how to speak French so that I could communicate with this side of the family. So I've always kind of been interested in languages. And I chose German for A level, and I thought, why not carry it on? I get an extra year at uni in Germany.
Yeah. So you got your qualification. Is it what was it? A solicitor or?
Yes. So I qualified as a solicitor. I chose not to go down the barrister route. My dad thought I'd make a good barrister, but to be quite honest, I think they do too much talking, and even though I can be talkative, I need my quiet time. So I decided to go down the solicitor route.
And where did you work?
So I had a training contract at a firm, international law firm called Weil Gotshal and Manges. It's a US law firm, and I was there for 12 years. Ended up doing corporate insolvency and restructuring. So you might remember when Lehman went down.
Yeah,
Lehman Brothers. Yeah. Yes, I was the one on that. We put them into Chapter 11 in the US, and I was the on the opposite side of the British English administrators, so working quite a lot with PwC, doing all this sort of organising a lot of the creditor meetings. So I spent years and years and years doing that. And because obviously I was there day one and legacy knowledge. And then after about 6-7 years, when it was all sort of starting to wrap up, I got a bit tired of it.
You took them down Chinatown. It was time to move on. Yeah?
I think so. So I spent a lot of time in 25 Bank Street, which is where, in Canary Wharf, which is where they're based. And there was a lot of time in the High Court in London on very hard benches. Note to self, take a cushion.
Right.
Yes, you can. In fact, I should have probably come to see you then. If I'd known of you then, that's when I probably needed you most. That's probably where all my back problems started, to be fair.
Well, it's all come to me. That's what I like. Yeah. One way or another, I'm getting the business. And so at the moment, you're working as a lawyer. Are you happy with that? Is that a profession that you're happy with? Do you feel like you've achieved what you needed to achieve with this? And
So I still work in a law firm, a different law firm, but I quit law. Because I decided law was not for me, practicing law was not for me. I think I grew out of it because I loved it when I started. I grew out of it. I was much more creative and much more entrepreneurial, and I just didn't like the constraints of operating within a legal framework. But I know how to deal with lawyers and I know how to deal with our clients. So I remained in the legal industry, and now I work on the business operations side. Of the bench.
Yeah, is that something that you were looking to carry on with?
Am I looking to carry on with it for the foreseeable future? Yes. I've got other interests though. I think when you get to my age, you start to weigh up your options, right? So my son's just started senior school, and I'm looking at the next 7 years and what I'm going to be doing during that time. And I don't like the cold, so I don't think I'm going to end up retiring in this country. Probably, dipping in and out. But I'm looking at other things and other opportunities as well.
Yeah, so at the moment you're supporting you have a son?
Yes.
And he's
11 years old. His name's Ethan. And he's absolutely full of life, a handful. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, and have you been married before?
I have been married before. I was married to his father. Married for about 4 years, and then that all went sour, unfortunately, as these things do, and we ended up parting ways. But Ethan fortunately still has a good relationship with his father, which is really important.
And he enjoys the school in Northamptonshire?
He started. This is week 2. So last week, for the very first time in a long time, he did say to me, "Mummy, even though there are lots of lessons, I'm kind of," emphasis on kind of, "looking forward to going to school tomorrow." So I think he's settling well. He was in denial, and I think still is in a bit of denial in terms of life's getting a bit too serious now. But yeah, he's just got to get on with it.
Yeah, I've got 2 children myself.
Mm-hmm.
One is 16, the other one's 24, and the oldest, Ellie, she has just 10 days ago given birth to my grandson.
Congratulations!
Yes, I'm very sort of pleased, very excited. A breech birth. She didn't have it through C-section. Mm-hmm. She was absolutely determined. She was having a normal birth, or as normal as possible. And the baby was born very healthy, and she left the hospital the same day. So that was it was very, very good. I'm very pleased. Total success. No C-section. But she's a midwife, and she was there with 2 midwives to help her.
Fantastic.
So I have an interest in all things. In all things, and especially to do with medicine and healthcare and that sort of thing. So we were talking before about the going back to the lawyer and how you've worked within that type of profession.
Mm-hmm.
Being a black woman.
Yes, indeed.
Have you had much discrimination?
I would say yes, not necessarily intentional, but absolutely yes. So, there's a sort of undertone, and I think this is in many professions, not just legal, but there's a sort of undertone of let's just see what she can do first, right? So unconscious bias when it comes to sort of acknowledging that somebody's gone through university, has got the qualifications, is the right person. So very often I would walk into a room and on a few occasions I'd be mistaken for the tea lady and be asked to sort of, replenish the refreshments. And, over time you develop thick skin.
Yeah.
You look shocked.
Yeah.
You develop thick skin and, I didn't mind because
a sense of humour.
Almost a sense of humour, but it almost became a bit of a joke for me because I'd look out for that. I'd look out for those opportunities and then go and sit next to my client who I've been speaking to over the phone for X number of weeks, and they don't realise that I'm actually their lawyer. And just, I think you're just eating a lot of humble pie, being gracious, but making sure that people know that you have a seat at the table. Is something that I've had to do time and time again. So there are little things that I would do, like I would absolutely make sure that, number one, I'm the best dressed. Number two, I'm always there on time, because there are stereotypes when it comes to black people being late, being lazy, maybe not looking on point. So I absolutely made sure that nobody could point at anything in terms of
you are
my
the
appearance.
Ambassador.
I am the ambassador, and that's what I did. And when I mentor young people, young black boys and girls or ethnic minorities, I'm very.
You do some counselling.
I do some mentoring, yes, and I'm very clear with them in terms of what to expect, how to conduct themselves, yet be themselves. Because it's important to be authentic and to be who you are, and what to expect. And so, yes, it's been an interesting experience.
Yeah, it certainly sounds it.
Yes. Yeah. But I survived, and it's fine. And over time, this color of your skin fades. Once people get to know you, once people get to know your, how competent you are.
As soon as they know who's boss.
They forget, maybe not who's boss, but they forget that you're black. It doesn't matter anymore. But it definitely initially when you first meet people, they're looking to hear what I sound like. Can I compose an email or write an email properly? How do I communicate? How do I present myself? It's they look at all of those things, but interestingly, they probably are completely unaware that that's what they're doing, but they do.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, it's the people who I've invited on to do these podcasts with me. Many of them have been people who have been born abroad, and I think what makes it, as it has done with yourself, so interesting is their take on life and their take on other cultures and how they have to work their way like a map through the different situations as they learn how they're going to have to manage themselves and to fit in different places and in different opportunities. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've learned myself. I learned so much from being here and talking to people when they're actually on the show. One of the things I wanted to sort of I have to ask this. When we set ourselves up and sat down here, and we were setting up the microphones, I noticed how good you were with that microphone, and it seemed quite obvious that you're not new to dealing with these sort of sound studios. So you're going to have to tell me something about your musical endeavours.
Endeavours, yes. So I've loved to sing. I love singing ever since I was young. And there's an interesting story which I'll share with you in a moment. But I ended up singing in a gospel choir just as a recreational thing. We had a gospel choir come to my university one day, and I thought I want to sing like that in Kent. And then ended up just kind of joining a group of people when I finished university. We recorded a couple of songs long time ago. I mean, I'm talking like 15-20 years ago, long time ago. And then we also ended up singing at the Royal Albert Hall one time, backing somebody up. So it was good.
When was that? Good.
When was it?
Yeah,
I cannot remember. I'm really bad with dates, but I think that was about 15 years ago. 20 years ago.
You no longer do that type of singing now?
I don't. I mean, I go to church, and then I ended up in the worship team, but that's also very different. So I do miss being in a choir, but it's time consuming, and obviously my young boy came along. But yeah, it is something. If I had the time to do it, I would definitely love to get involved again.
I want to go back, if that's all right with you, to the mentoring that you were talking about, and how did you get involved in the mentoring?
Like many things, I don't necessarily put my hand up, but people sort of seek me out. So I kind of walk into situations, or they walk into me, and they'll, send me an email, or just ask me, would you be my mentor? Can I, or can I just have a chat? And then it develops naturally out of that, and all of a sudden, before you know it, I'm sort of mentoring them and giving them key pointers. So it's natural relationships and contacts. That's how it usually happens, or recommendations.
You're obviously receiving some energy from this, so you've had some, I'm guessing, some success stories.
Yes. So the last guy I mentored and set up, a number of meetings and helped him sort of with interview techniques. He got into a firm called Clifford Chance, which is one of the magic circles in London, shortly afterwards. So that was really, really good. So I just love to see young people thrive, especially those who perhaps don't fit the description of a particular profession. I love to see them breaking the mold. Right, so that's what kind of drives me. And also at work, whether it's somebody who's looking to get into a profession, or whether it's somebody who's junior who needs to train up, or needs a little bit of hand holding to get their confidence up. I'm very, very patient, and I don't mind giving my time to those kind of people. Although you do know I'm extremely impatient when it comes to people who are supposed to know what to do and what their job's supposed to be, and they don't do it. I'm the complete opposite. I just cannot stand incompetency when it comes to, work and being paid for something that, you're deemed to be a professional in.
I think that's the way. That's about being professional, isn't it? After all, that's the definition. Yeah. Do you have any hobbies?
Yes, I do like to horse ride. So I started learning how to horse ride a few years ago. I absolutely love it. And yeah, when I can, I sing. I'm pretty much now, I guess, a home person. So I like to cook for friends and entertain when I'm not too tired with everything else going on. And one thing that I discovered recently is Reformer Pilates. Absolutely brilliant.
Okay.
I would highly recommend Reformer Pilates to anyone who's sort of feeling a bit, I need to get back into a bit of exercise.
And what do you call this? You call it?
Reformer Pilates.
Right.
So it's not the normal Pilates, sort of mat Pilates on the floor, but it's on a machine called the Reformer, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's a gym in one machine, essentially.
And they have them in Northamptonshire?
They do, I believe so. Yeah. So I will.
I'll be there, definitely checking that out. Yeah. What's the future? What are you looking to do? What are you looking to achieve next?
So I've been on sabbatical for about 8 weeks. I've got another week and a bit to go. So I'm currently setting up my office. Moved to Northampton, end of July. So I haven't been here for very long. So I'm setting up my office, and we'll go back to work. And then over the next few years, I'll be looking to diversify, because I'm a great believer in, with the way things are going in the world these days, you can't just rely on one income, because at the end of the day, we've seen businesses collapse left, right and centre. We've seen people rationalising their businesses. We've seen AI come in and start to take over. And even in the legal field, we've got a lot of, AI and document automation and machine learning technology starting to do a lot of the work that, perhaps trainees would have done before. So I think things are going to change in the legal field. I love everything creative. Really like interior design, anything to do with houses. So I'm probably going to be, and I've started looking into moving into that direction. And again, education. One of my dreams is to, with my partner, open up a nursery and a secondary school in Africa, so that we can give back.
That's amazing.
Yes. So that's where the tide is heading.
Yes. Well, I'm glad I asked that question. Blandine, it's been great having you on the podcast. I can't thank you enough, to be honest.
You're very welcome.
Very interesting. What a story of the place that you've lived. So and the things you've done and what you've achieved.
Yeah, and I'm still not that old.
No,
getting there.
I've got no idea how old you are. I could find out, but I'm not going to.
It's on the form that I filled
know
in when I
it's
came
on
to
the
your
form,
practice.
yeah. I know it's on the form. No, brilliant. Thank you so much for
You're
coming
very
on. I really
welcome. It's been
appreciate your
great.
time. I'd like to buy you a little drink and a meal when we go out now, just to say thank you. But what we're going to do is just say thanks for everyone watching and taking part, listening to this 7th of the podcasts, Being Human. And I hope you have enjoyed it. And if you have, then please share and like. Thank you.